Hello and good morning, and welcome to the Moreness culture we are sharing here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Beena. Good morning, Beena. It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is good to be
looking
here. You
forward
have
to
a
continually reading. Yeah.
very nice background, by the way. And your
Oh
shirt is
yeah.
also
Oh yeah. See,
authentic.
it's a very Musashi picture over there, but
Yes, and also
we're
a
not focused
shirt.
on the warrior style. We focused on the
Yes,
abstract, just to be clear.
yes, and your shirt also.
Oh, thank you. It's very Blake Sheldon, according to Jill Nicolini. Just by the way, that's what she
Yes,
said to
yes.
me. So, yeah, channeling Blake Sheldon or something like that, or very Blake Sheldon. I
Uh,
forget exactly how she said it, but yeah,
oh, that's good. That's good. It is
yeah,
just
yeah,
I don't know. Everything is coming together nicely, and it
yeah,
looks very appropriate for today what we are
yes,
doing.
yes.
So
Oh,
today again we will continue with Musashi, Miyamoto Musashi's Book
yeah,
of Five Ring. Uh, Many ways to call it, like the Book of Five Rings, Book of the Five Rings, whatever you want to say that, because Syl insists
yeah,
that it is just like Book of Five Rings, so insists
yeah,
on
yeah,
simplicity
yeah.
because
Well, it's the official title is A Book of Five Rings, but that's the translated title, no, not
exactly,
the title.
exactly. This is the some okay, not so. You can say that drawback of translation.
Yeah,
No matter how well it is done, your inner self always feel that I
yeah.
wish I could just read this exactly the person when he was sharing or they were sharing actually. And this is something I feel that it's okay. It's about intent also, but
Yeah.
again, of course, we are happy that whatever we have. Otherwise, that would be completely nothing for us if it would not be translated into other languages. So,
Yeah,
of course,
yeah,
many positive also. So today's thought is about that being grateful of and for what we have
right.
right now, and deliberately choosing the positive sides of things. This is a perspective
Yeah,
shifting practice, the simplest one we can do in everyday life, and this is what we focus on by practicing to see things what's positive in it. Yes, it looks very, it seemed like the yes complete disaster, negative, could be anything in your life in situation. A random situation could be completely negative, completely disastrous on surface. But if you choose to and just to hold on and practice the power pause and say that, okay, what is positive in it? Even just don't go for the learning process. Like,
mm.
okay, yes, what is learning for me? Because learning
Hold
is
on,
every.
Beena, hold on 1 second. We may have to start again. I don't understand here.
Okay,
Why
okay,
is it showing me and Jill in the
okay.
two characters reading strategy? I shared I shared the wrong
Okay.
thing, I think. I did
Okay,
something
no
wrong.
problem.
All right. No,
No
no, no, no,
problem.
no. Keep going. You're fine. You're fine. It's me.
Okay.
It's me.
So, yes. Okay,
Uh,
so
uh,
I was just saying that, okay, yes, the learning is in every situation because this is what universe is actually geared and assisting us in learning and growing. But if we just, as a first
yeah.
step towards anything, if we just choose to see and look for, be curious about what is positive in it, not necessarily for me, but what is positive in it. This perspective, this idea helps you us to understand that things can be positive for some at the same time can be negative for others. Like right now in
Yeah.
this situation, if something is negative for me, that could be positive for others. Okay, so what it is. And then if we become able to see that, right there we will become able to see things from the other people's perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, which means that as a result, by implication, we already unhooked from all the situation, which is again a positive. So just by doing one small step towards perspective shifting, we can get so much out of any
Yes.
situation.
Yes. Perspective shifting is such a powerful, powerful, powerful tool. It is ridiculously powerful because the moment you perspective shift, like Beena said, for some people it's positive, some people it's negative. We shift out of that bubble that we are perpetually living in to assume that that the way it is for you is that the way it is for most. Like for instance,
Yes.
the bubble of it's raining, it's a miserable day.
Yes.
We just accept this. But I love the rain. It's not miserable for me, and I know others that share the same, right? It's wonderful. So how is this ever that this was a thing? But people believe it, and they really that it affects their mood because they believe it. So when it's raining, they're miserable. It's just too incredible. It's too incredible. We have to be very, very, very careful of this, right? And that's the thing. The moment you perspective shift as a deliberate activity, somebody else sees it as positive. Oh, well, that means that I don't have to see it as miserable, right? See the power of it? It's just incredible. And then you realize that, hey, that the way you see things is not the only way to see things. You know? Because we stuck in this idea of there being the truth, like a singular thing. There's only one truth to everything. That's not so at all. The day
Exactly.
isn't
Exactly.
miserable or happy if it's raining. This is something that somebody's put onto it that they believed, and they made you believe what they believe because they don't want to ever seem
Exactly.
wrong. It's just so childish
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yes,
A
and
mess, a
I
mess, a
have been
mess.
actually experiencing this in my home. Like when everybody, of course, as a general thing, as a general theme, because of the scarcity of rain in my region, everybody feels like, oh yes, okay, so now it's raining. Finally, it is raining. Everybody
No,
actually, we
no.
have to wait for that. But even in that situation, some people really feel irritated with the rain.
Yeah, yeah.
Come
I mean,
on,
how
now
childish are
it's
you to
raining.
be irritated by rain? Oh, it's inconvenient and all that. It's like, come
Yes,
on, come on, come on, come on.
yes.
No, 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 no,
This,
can't do that.
this is a
Can't do
reality
that.
for many people that okay they don't like it, so even when you
Yeah,
are in the same situation, there is still some people are going to be like that,
yeah.
and
But
you can't
that's
do
just
anything about it.
narcissism, right? Just
Yes,
narcissism. Yeah. Their opinion is the only opinion that matters, that counts, and the world is just how it is for them. But this is narcissism. It is such a madness. It's so preposterous, but it's madness that has been pushed out into our culture as normality.
hmm.
But it's not. But it's not. All right, let's go to Musashi. Let's go to Musashi. Right?
Yes, thank you
Go
so
right
much for
there.
giving
Go
me
right there.
time because I was just busy making comments there, and now
Oh, no problem, no problem. We're a
now
team.
we
We
will
work
go.
together.
Yes,
We
so thank you
work
so much
together.
for that. See, this
Yes.
is this is again. I just want to emphasize more on it because when once you start working with honesty, with
Yeah.
integrity, in other words, with impeccability, then you don't need to say things. Everybody
Correct.
will take care of things with
Yeah.
like, okay, yes, what is appropriate right now? The harmony and the attunement, they come together by setting your intent to be try to be impeccable. This is what I am experiencing now. You don't need to do much about it.
Yeah.
Things will come automatically. They just come. They just happen. So okay, so yes. I don't see you live on Instagram right now.
I am, but I don't know why you don't see me there, but I am.
Okay.
I don't
Okay,
know
so
how that
let me
works,
check.
Beena. Yeah.
No, I'm going to check it from yes, now I can see.
All right. I just
Yes.
screen shared now. So
Yes.
Sid joined, it says. Hello, Sid.
Yes. This is
Very
me.
good. Very good. Yes, I know it's you, sweetness.
Okay. Okay, let's start now. Yeah, I have done my things and I can see you there. So let's
Wonderful.
start reading Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings,
Yes.
which is a
Yes.
completely different experience for me because in the
Yeah.
beginning I was not getting this. Like this man is talking about killing other people in such detail, like he's a super chef and he's just telling people that okay,
Yeah.
how to make this dish. But again, appropriateness
Chop the
also that
onions, kill the people. Same thing. Yeah.
yes, yes. And then he is going into such details, which is like, really? Seriously, guy? This is what you are
Yeah.
teaching other people? But again,
Right.
this aspect of life also exists.
Yeah.
Not only
Yeah.
exist, but sometimes in some situation, it was essential, it was needed, it was crucial to learn these skills. So again, coming back to the same point,
Right.
try to see things in the context. Yes.
Correct. Correct. Now there is an artificiality involved, right?
Yes.
Because yes, he does talk about soldiers, troopers, all this, right? Okay, now it's in a military context. All right, and now it has an appropriateness there. However, for the most part, he's talking about dueling, which is challenging somebody to a fight. Totally unnecessary. This is just to prove I'm better. That's also hierarchy, dominance, superiority. Yeah. So in that context, thoroughly inappropriate. Yeah, what he's talking about, right? Anyway, look at this. The heading today, and the astute observer might notice the title.
Two characters reading strategy. Yes. Okay, so your picture is paused for me. I don't know it is me or you, but okay, let's start reading. The benefit of two characters reading strategy. Wow, wonderful. Masters of the longsword are called strategists. As for the other military arts, those who master the bow are called archers. Those who master the spear are called spearmen. Those who master the gun are called marksmen. Those who master the halberd are called. Okay, so, okay, I'm here, but I cannot read anymore because Syl's screen has been dropped. But again, I had no idea that it is going to be two characters reading strategy. This is exactly what is happening. Two characters reading the strategy from Miyamoto Musashi. I am sitting here in my home, and Syl is there on the other side of the world. These two characters of Syl and Beena, they are reading the strategy. This is wonderful.
That's kind of what I was going to say and share, and Beena just did it automatically, right? Now, the
You
magic
need to
is
share a
that
screen again, Syl.
yes,
Yes.
yes. The magic that I was going to say is this the title. Can you see the title of the post in YouTube?
Yes. Yes.
What does it say? What does it say?
Two characters reading.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Beena, I'm assuming from the, I just heard that I dropped there for a second. So I just heard the
Yes.
tail end of your comments, right? But,
Yes.
it says two characters reading strategy. If you
Yes.
only look at that title, and I'm assuming from what your comments were, you were
Yes.
understanding this to mean the two characters being the two of us. Yes?
Yes. Yes. I was saying that. Okay, what a wonderful coincidence here that the title of this chapter is exactly depicting the situation right now because two
Right.
characters are reading a strategy.
Right. But this actually it is Musashi
Yes.
heading. Yes, I mean it happens to apply to Beena and I, but
Yes.
it's what Musashi put there. It's nothing to do with us, right? It's purely
Exactly.
coincidental. It's just
Exactly.
magical. It's just magical. And he says the full title here is The Benefit of the Two Characters Reading Strategy. Now, this is very poorly translated. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is very, very poor there. And because, as we're going to see now, it's about the kanji, the character. He's calling it character. Yeah, but that's what this is talking about. So it's the benefit of the two kanjis that read as strategy. Right? So there's two kanjis that that read as strategy, and one means one thing and one means another. That's what this means, but this is very poorly translated. Yes, very poorly translated. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
again, you should have had a colon there, right? Just
Hmm.
from an English point of view, because now it's the benefit of the two characters, two people reading strategy, reading it. No, that's not what it means. But anyway, we'll see. I'll just keep this in mind that the translation not very good. All right, will you read, please, Beena?
Okay. I'm going to read it again. Masters of the longsword are called strategists. As for the other military arts, those who master the bow are called archers. Those who master the spear are called spearmen. Those who master the gun are called marksmen. Those who master the halberd are called halberdiers. But we do not call masters of the way of the longsword longswordsmen, nor do we speak of companion swordsmen, because bows, guns, spears, and halberds are all warriors' equipment. They are certainly part of a strategy. To master the virtue of the longsword is to govern the world and oneself. Thus, the longsword is the basis of strategy. The principle is strategy by means of the longsword. If he attains the virtue of the longsword, one man can beat 10 men, just as
All
one
right, one
man
second
can.
here. All right, let's just pause here because we need some additional context. Yes,
Yes, yes.
the long sword. This is the katana. Now, right, when we understand the katana, there's a standard length to it and all of this. Musashi
Hmm.
used a longer than standard longsword. He used an extra longsword, right? But there's an even longer one. But anyway, I forget the name of it now, a very particular name. But so it is not referencing him using this longer than standard katana. It just
Hmm.
means the katana relative to the wakizashi, which is the short sword, the long sword. But why is this so prominent? Why is he emphasizing this? Because in that culture, up until that time, right, this the katana is seen as the weapon. It stands apart from everything else. It has a stature way up and above everything else, right? And it got this status, this disproportional status, yeah,
Yes.
makes
Sorry
it
to
something
interrupt you,
special.
Syl.
Say again?
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you here, but we have someone who joined us on Instagram.
Ah,
So
brilliant,
just
brilliant, 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 brilliant,
yes.
brilliant. All right. Hello and welcome, someone. Bina didn't say who. Sorry to
Yes,
call you
because
someone.
no, but I think that you need to see that because
Oh,
I couldn't
oh,
read her
I am
names.
looking there. I am
Yes,
looking there.
yes,
Brilliant,
yes,
brilliant. Hello, Jill. Hello, hello, hello. This is too wonderful. And hello, Lubna. And hello, Lesgun. I don't know the last part. Lesgun, dry W.
yes,
Lovely,
yes,
lovely. I just love all that you are here. Right. So to
yes.
go back to Musashi, please ask questions. They do show up in real time for me as comments. So please, if you comment there, I will respond. I have the streaming software that I use shows me the comments in real time. And I will pay attention and make an effort to respond because I love to respond in real time. So this long sword, the katana, in other words, it has at this point in time of Musashi already, and it's already at the start of guns, and it doesn't matter that somebody with a gun can shoot you with the thing, and that's the end of you, but it doesn't matter. It still retained this status, and it's tied in very much to superiority and status. That in order to use the longsword, this is the weapon of weapons, and you have to be special, and you have to have real depth of character to use it. This whole mythology, right? The mythos of Bushido is associated to the katana or the longsword. I mean, this translator unfortunately doesn't use the word katana, which he should do, because we know this word. It's part of English now. All right, this was in 74. Maybe it wasn't so well known back then, but all right. I'm just going to use katana rather than longsword. It's much more accurate. So the katana has got this mythical quality to it as being special. And of course, the user of the katana is superior to the user of the gun and the halberd and the spear, which is the yari and the naginata, doesn't matter, the bow, whatever, right? You are superior to all of them because you are using this katana, right? So, and that's why you called a strategist, because the understanding, the idea is that if you are going to be an appropriate user of a katana, that means you are going to be engaged in much more. You are representing somebody as knowing, obviously knowing actual strategy in the English sense of the word, right? Which is just like warfare strategy. And I was relating a story earlier on my live podcast there. I was talking about my strategy of how I utilized my father's self-importance against him, yeah? And I used the compassion and the indulgence of my mother and sisters to leverage my father again. All strategy, right? And so there's many ways to use strategies, not just a military thing. Of course, you got strategy in business, you got strategy in personal self-development, you can self-leverage yourself many ways, right? The strategy, very, very, very important. Strategy is about doing something in a way that if you do it under normal ways, it would not be possible, but through strategy, it becomes possible. So strategy is leverage, which is the same thing. You've got a rock and you've got a branch and you've got a smaller rock and you need to move the bigger rock, right? Individually, you can't, like if you take the branch and push against the stone just directly, it doesn't work. You need that smaller rock to use as a fulcrum point and use it as a lever to go. Now, suddenly, those same elements combined in a strategic way enables you to do something that you could not do. Right? So this is where strategy comes from, just to go a little sideways. But this longsword mythos and the mythos that goes with the person doing it, you were elevated. So being a strategist is very synonymous with being at least in the context that Musashi is using it here, to be a strategist as in a longswordsman, right, or as in a katana user. It's very much synonymous with being a samurai, because as a samurai, you got to use this longsword, right? When you join the military, you can't say, hey, you know what? I don't want to be using the halberd or the bow. I don't want you. No, no, sorry, you're not special enough to do this. So they had this whole ego status disproportionality around the longsword. It was considered way superior to everything else. Now, there is some merit to this. Yes, it is as a martial arts weapon. It does have benefits. When I had the sword and the knife store, basically owned an armory once upon a time. If you play video games and you go to the armory, those armories are very lame compared to the armory that I was. Really awesome. We had like 600 swords up on the wall, and we had the samurai suit of armor sitting on the counter there, and we had a medieval suit of armor, you name it, whatever it was, we had it, right? It was really cool. Anyway, so when I had this store and to understand this, from the usage of this, we had many people that came into the store that obviously were super into martial arts, and some of them they were like samurai. I mean, they just their whole thinking anyway. So there was this one group of guys that were very into actually testing stuff, right? And they did very real tests with, well, like they used a wooden katana rather than a metal one, right? But they would fight each other and they would get hurt, right? But all right, that's the way they wanted real testing. So they tested which weapons came out the best, and the guy who did it, his name was Paul Silver. He said three came. He said one was the katana, and the second was the quarterstaff, and the third were skirma sticks, which are just two sticks. They're fairly heavy sticks, and they come in different weights, but it's a stick in each hand. So you've got the length of the quarterstaff, and the quarterstaff can be used in many ways. Takes some skill to know a quarterstaff, but it's an old weapon that's been around for a long time. And same with the skirma sticks. This is something that comes from like the Philippines, that area, right? that only more recently came outside of that area. And then, of course, the katana. Now, those who really follow such things will probably say, yeah, but the katana didn't have a blade, and that would make the difference, right? Because when you hit somebody, if you don't break the bone, you don't necessarily incapacitate them, or they don't die over time. But if you cut somebody, they can bleed out, and so there is some merit to this being a special weapon. However, the more important idea here is to understand is that this the samurai and the use of the sword is associated with profound status elevation, right? So when we look at this now, when he's calling them strategists, why the sword user is a strategist and not the bowman? And it's just as much use any weapon you need strategy, right? But as a strategist, the samurai would know the usage of all of those weapons, whereas an archer or a marksman, a gun user, right? They wouldn't necessarily know how to use the sword because the training involved in using a halberd, for instance, or a spear, pole arms, that's much less than it is to, or even a bow, right? But the bow is more elevated. And if you look at the bow, by the way, samurai bows, Japanese bows are very different to Western bows. They don't have an even curve. They're like thick at the bottom and they're very thin on the top, and they're very tall and long. But because of that disproportional length, you can shoot it off horseback and get quite a lot of power out of it. Anyway, just minor details. I just wanted to make this point that when he's calling the samurai strategist here, or at least long swordsman, just think of it as samurai. And that he's saying that the samurai is a master of all the military arts and himself. Yes, in order to be a strategist, you also have to master yourself, right? Which is the Bushido way. And there's a lot of moreness involved in this. And as we said, a lot of sadness also, right? Because part of being a samurai was to have integrity and honor and impeccability and all of those things. We talk about Moreness culture. It was a nascent Moreness culture. However, it was also a doomed Moreness culture. Why was it doomed? Because part of it was to be a samurai. I explained this before, but I'm explaining again because we have others listening who weren't here before. Part of this samurai culture was to be obedient and loyal. And this was fiercely, fiercely, it was like the most important category, a quality, a trait, even more so than integrity. Honor, yes, was very important. But your daimyo, your lord, who you worked for, who you had to be obedient and loyal to, told you to do things which were criminal and immoral. But the samurai did them, and it led to the collapse of that as a culture, right? Because of this corruption. You cannot live with hypocrisy. So it's a very involved point here. But when we understand it through the context of the superiority paradigm, we start to see where Musashi is coming from to call them strategists, right? Because it's part of the whole Bushido samurai culture of being. They strove to be more, but it was a flawed system. Yeah, much like in Naruto. You'll see Naruto in my tags if you look there, right? With the ninja way, right? This is all throughout Naruto. And if you don't know what Naruto is, go and look it up. It's really worthwhile, right? It's not only fun, but there's a moreness to it. So Naruto is a noble soul who is looking for moreness, but he struggles to find it because the way that he's pursuing, much like the samurai way, is a flawed way. Yeah, because you're looking to solve your problems through violence. That's the ninja way, right? But there's other things to the ninja way. You'll never quit. You don't ever give up on your friends. All those noble qualities, but it's not recognized in Naruto as the pursuit of nobleness, right? Which comes back to the moreness of what we're doing. The whole Moreness-Project involves the entire big program about nobleness, being noble, nobility, not hereditary nobility, not titles, not none of that nonsense. Actually, for real being noble. Now, of course, in order to be noble, you have to have all your P's and Q's. You have to have yourself sorted first. You have to have impeccability as part of you before you can do that. You have to take your character. You have to have honor and integrity and discipline and all of these things, thoroughness, perseverance, scrupulousness, etc. Right? All of the things that involve impeccability. You need to have that first, and because otherwise you could easily end up applying inappropriate application of goodness. Huh? Very important, very important. When we understand this in the full context, we see something really profound. We see the similarities. like in instance between the Naruto, which is that ninja culture, right? Yes, it's a story and it's anime and it's wild and crazy and all over, but the underlying abstract of it, right? He's trying to do something which the circumstances don't permit him to do, and he's always struggling against this. Same thing for the samurai. And then we bring us back to Nobelia and the Nobelia culture, the Moreness culture, which is where this is possible. There's no conflict. It is enabled. And it's not a bubble, idealistic, hollow culture that's fragile. Oh, yeah, you're all just into being nice and kind and good and considerate and nobleness, all this. Yeah, but that makes you vulnerable. No, 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 no. Why? Because part of that culture is to understand, really, really, really understand the superiority paradigm. So when we look at the Moreness-Project, it comprises three main programs. One is the psychology of the superiority paradigm. The other one is capital H hearing, which is about attunement, connecting, being able to not only hear others, but to hear the universe, to hear yourself, right? So it's about attention and awareness and all sorts of things, but the skills of using that. And then the main overarching program is about nobleness, being noble, and nobility, right? So it all works together, and that's all founded on the bedrock of Way-of-Impeccability. So it all works together. You can't do it in isolation, which is what I'm saying is that when you really apply this Moreness culture, Nobelia culture, right? As in the book series on Nobelia, about the Biella series, all that stuff that Biella does there, we get to understand that this is not a hollow culture, that it's not just lopsided, it's not vulnerable because they don't understand the superiority paradigm. No, absolutely they do. And they are prepared to deal with it as necessary. But they consider themselves spirit warriors. You say, yeah, but this, they're all into nobleness. Surely that doesn't involve violence. No, it doesn't. They use strategy. Yes, if they absolutely need to, sure. Yeah? But if you use strategy, truly use strategy the way Sun Tzu advocates, if you are a master of strategy, you'll never need to use violence, unless you'll find strategic ways to avoid doing that, right? So a true warrior is somebody whose commitment and focus is for peace, and not just peace, but moreness. Really, that's what you're making an effort to accomplish, right? And fighting here is just appropriate effort, yeah? And the same point. So it all works together. It's very, very cool to understand this. But now we want to look at Musashi in context. And part of Moreness culture is to have ADU and then A. So ADU stands for awareness, discernment, and understanding. And with the understanding, you come to understand that you need to have application, because without application, it's meaningless, right? So first, you need to have the awareness to be aware that there is more. We live in bubbles, like I said earlier. Then you need to have discernment to say, well, I'm aware there's stuff, but now I need to sort through things, like the discernment of understanding the superiority paradigm and not being involved in it. And the understanding, like now, the discernment to pick through what we read from Musashi and read it in appropriate context and not misunderstand it, and to see multiple layers, to see depth, for instance. That's all what discernment is. To look at implications, to be able to extrapolate, all part of discernment, right? These are strategies of awareness, tools of attention, incredibly powerful. They are actually also powerful in literal sword fighting. I think we'll get to see some examples later on Musashi, but I could certainly extrapolate when the time comes. And then understanding. When we understand, for instance, there's no need for forgiveness. You just understand. Just one example of understanding. When we understand, we know it inside ourselves. We don't have to believe it. We understand it, right? We get it. We have it. It's ours. When we have true understanding, we make it our own. It's now mine. And then it becomes part of us. I don't have to remember it. Now I have changed via understanding, capital U understanding. I have changed via understanding. And then, of course, we take that, and through understanding, if you really understand stuff, you understand that without application, it's all meaningless. And once you have this understanding just once, you can't just stop there. You have to go further. In the story, there's kind of an intellectual character in the Biella series. His name's Camillus. He's a professor. He teaches philosophy, right? And he's an intellectual. He comes from a world that's like a university world, a really classic university world, right? And all there, it's all about just understanding stuff. And he really does, but he never makes that step to application. So when it comes to Nobelia, he sees people applying all of the philosophy and sensibility that he thought he knew and understood. and he realizes, oh my God, I've missed the boat. And he has worldview collapse, right? He realizes that there's a flaw to his world, his system. And it's very devastating to poor Camillus. He has a hard time dealing with it. But I'm making this bigger point here, right? To look at things in context. This is discernment. And the huge big point is that he calls these masters of the longsword are called strategists. Now, from a Nobelia-Living point of view, they also consider themselves strategists, but not quite in the same way as Musashi, right? Yes, the underlyingness of it is the same. But strategist is in this context here, in the one meaning of the kanji, it means a longswordsman. In the other one, it is somebody who applies strategy, right? So in the other meaning, the new nobility consider themselves this, right? A long story, but also just part of Way-of-Impeccability, a strategy, right? Very cool, very cool. All right, a long story there, long story there. Any comments, Beena, in Instagram? I want to hear from you, Joe. I want to hear from you, Lesgan. I want to hear from you, Lubna. There was somebody else. I thought there was another name there. Lesgun. I want to hear from you, Lesgun. I'm abbreviating your name because it's hard to say Lesgun Druv. Yeah. So I'm just, I know we were just talking about inappropriate abbreviating people's names, but, when it comes to usernames, that's somewhat required. All right, please continue, Beena. Please continue. Please continue. I'll keep watching for comments. I'll keep
Yes.
watching for comments. Maybe
Yes.
get
Okay.
it back here. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's okay. Nor do we speak of companion swordsmen, because bows, guns, spears, and halberds are all warriors' equipment. They are certainly part of the strategy. To master the virtue of the long sword is to govern the world and oneself. Thus, the long sword.
Right. So stop this. Sorry. You see there, he
Yes.
says, you've got to watch really carefully. Look at discernment. He doesn't say to master the longsword, to master the virtue of the longsword. And it doesn't mean just the inherent value of the longsword in a pure militarily or martial point of view, but to this mindset, this samurai culture, the sword has its own life. It contains its own inner virtue. The sword is almost like a totem. It has its own life and spirit, and the blades got named and all of this, right? So it has a whole mythology behind it. But so to master the virtue is, again, look what he said about Lao Tzu, right? About Taoism.
Yes.
He called that the way of virtue. See, that was how
Yes.
Musashi mentioned it, right? I mean, it is a
Yes.
translation for it, right? But to understand this, just that one single word in there, it's not just a casual thing. It has a lot of significance to it, which is why we do capital R readings. See those layers, right? So to master the virtue of the longsword is to govern the world and oneself. I mean, he says it there all, but this is a profound importance. In other words, if you wanted to be, well, in those days it would be to be a man, right? A capital M man, but I refuse to use such terminology. To be a person, to be a sentient being. I like to even go past just humanity, even, right? To be a true,
Mm.
real sentient being, to possess sobriety and sensibility and moreness and all of this, right? You
Yes.
have to be a wizard of yourself. I don't even want to use this word master, right? You have to be really have your stuff together, right? And this is really cool when you look at it in this. Again, we're looking at a nascent Moreness culture, right?
Mm.
It's tried to be a moreness culture. It has some of the elements, but it also has flaws. Right? But it's cool to look at it as what Musashi is talking about. The samurai culture on its own was that, but Musashi does take it further because he's aware of the flaws, right? And he's going to point us out how to really get the most out of this from a moreness point of view. Very
Mm.
cool stuff. Yeah. Make sense, Beena?
Yes.
Please continue. Please continue.
Okay. To master the virtue of the long sword is to govern the world and oneself. Thus, the long sword is the basis of strategy. The principle is strategy by means of the long sword. Wow. The principle is strategy by means of the long sword. Okay. If we
Right. So yeah,
atheist,
we also want to understand something, Beena. We
yes.
understand one of the core understandings in Way of Impeccability, which is about beliefs and the power of beliefs, and not a living subject to beliefs, or minimizing beliefs to as little as possible. And here we
Mm,
see this being involved with Musashi. He has this belief in the magic, the superiority, the awesomeness of the longsword. It's a belief, it's not a reality. Yeah. And there's just a
mm,
fascinatingness how we can ignore reality. So I told you about this thing of the peasants, right? Where the samurai could just, you ordinary citizen, and you touch the samurai, you're basically a peasant, and the samurai could kill
mm,
you. Yes, this was legally okay. But there were some peasants who said, no, we don't like this. Now, the peasants were absolutely forbidden to own weapons, particularly the swords, right? This was just a
mm,
no-no, right? And many cultures have said you can't own, yes, basic knives and all that. So what the peasants did, they got creative and they got clever, right? So they
mm,
made other weapons. Well, in Europe, it was called a buckler, but it developed independently. They took a rice colander, right? You put rice in
mm,
with the holes, and they put a handle across the top of it. Yes, put your hand on it, hold it like this. So now you've got this colander around your hand. Yes, and they use it like in Europe, it was called a buckler, and it's a very light little shield. Now it's maybe only this big, right? Or bucklers might even be that big. The point of it is not that you're using it to shield yourself. The point is you use it to block swords, right? And to deflect their path. That's its only purpose. But then they developed another really powerful weapon, which their military police and just police in general ended up using. And I forget the Japanese name for it. But basically,
mm,
it is like a metal comb with just very, very thick tines, right? So it's like a rectangle with a handle on it, like a comb,
mm,
but it's very, very thick, and it's just got these grooves, right? Like the forks, the tines of it, right? And it's just like this on a handle essentially, but this is metal now. And in those tines there, you catch a sword and it gets stuck. Now, of course, if you block a sword and you get it in there, you just have to angle the this weapon ever so
mm.
slightly, and the sword is blocked. And now you can use the leverage against the sword, and you can easily disarm an opponent with that sword, right? And so these counter fighters against the peasants who didn't accept all of this nonsense, they developed techniques to actually defeat samurai. Yes. Now, of course, part of
Uh,
Musashi's culture, this is just not there, and I suspect it comes a little bit later than Musashi, maybe. But this total superiority of this as a weapon is completely negated by the realities where people were forced to come up with innovative weapons to deal with this. And that's why I said the police ended up using this because it's so effective, and it essentially nullifies the sword, right? Isn't that fascinating?
mm, yes.
Yeah. So again, see, it's a bubble. This whole culture of the sword, this whole idea that it's special and wonderful and superior, it's a bubble. It's a bubble. It's a belief system. It's not borne out by reality. Yeah. Isn't that
Wow.
fascinating?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
very
then
interesting.
when you look at, I don't know how much of ninja toe is myth and fantasy. I mean, certainly there is some reality involved, but this is part of the ninja, which really the ninja in the movies and mythology, they mythologized as essentially as assassins, right? Private contractors, mercenary assassins. But the reality of it is they started off as government secret agents, essentially, right? And they were bad guys to start
Yes.
off, right? And then, of
Wow.
course, they broke off, but the ninja toe is really taking strategy to its ultimate. Yes, okay, we don't want to fight you directly. We're going to find some other way to take care of our enemies, right? Total strategy. Find better ways of doing it. Yeah. So yeah, the strategy thing goes all the way, in other words. Yeah. But the ultimate strategy is the only this is coming from the young man, right? Young man
Mm,
quote. The only way to truly defeat an enemy is to make them your friend.
yes.
Take strategy all the way to the end. This is new nobility strategy. Don't look at how to beat somebody. Learn how to join with them, collaborate with them, and both get benefit from collaboration. If you defeat one side, you've lost all their value, their virtue, their skills. It's just a waste. It's foolish. It's simple. Plus, you never truly defeat an enemy because there's always people that know of them. And even if they don't have any friends, you're still in a culture where you can defeat them. Well, they can defeat me too if they chose to. You live in a fear-based hierarchy culture. Superiority paradigms, terrible. See, Moreness culture, everybody's friends, no enemies. Yeah, yeah, very powerful. Anyway, please keep going, Beena.
It is quite idealistic to have no enemies at all. Like, okay, just make it more subtle that, okay, more
Yeah.
any opponent at all.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's not just, it's unrealistic, never mind idealistic. I mean, yes, generally idealism is seen as unrealistic, but I don't want to necessarily associate that because the Moreness culture is also idealistic, but it is also realistic. Yeah, to have no
hmm,
enemies is unrealistic. Yeah. Yeah.
hmm.
To defeat your enemies. It's unrealistic. It's never happened in history, right? Especially not on a societal level. There's never ever been any culture anywhere that defeated all of its enemies. When you have that
Yes.
mindset, you start fighting with people, your own people, right? So they may not have external enemies, at least for a period of time. But look at Japan. Their entire history is of strife within Japan, right? And the time Musashi came was when they finally started to get this sorted out with the Tokugawa shogunates, right? That combined and sorted and all these warring different factions and clans and daimyos united everything into a singular entity, right? And same thing with China, right? I mean, it was all these separate kingdoms that got combined at some point into the Middle Kingdom. So this is most places are like this. I mean, you go to like Germany, or England, all the different what do they call them? Well, I don't remember, like cantons, but there's other words for it, provinces, whatever. They were all individual kingdoms at one point. Yes, like Saxony and whatever. Right, that was the king of this. It's like, they was all small, very local, and then they got bigger. And now in Europe, never really combined until this last century, right? Where they got the European Union, where they got to be similar to China, which learned this long ago, to combine and have this one central huge potency. But how many dialects there are in China and different cultures, right? Completely different, isolated. And you go look up there when they have like a national day where people dress up in all their traditional costumes and that. There's, I don't know, hundreds of it, I think. Just huge amount of variety. Same thing in France. I think in France they've got individual languages, like 18 individual different languages that are still spoke in some parts in France. It's quite fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. It's just been the nature of it all over the world, really, right? Things group together because there's a sensibility to it. Otherwise, you're fighting each other, right? Common enemies usually do the trick. Common enemies usually do the trick. It's fascinating. All right, please continue, Beena. Please continue.
The principle is strategy by means of the longsword. If he attains the virtue of the longsword, one man can beat 10 men, just as one man can beat 10. So 100 men can beat 1,000, and 1,000 can beat 10,000. In my strategy, one man is the same as 10,000. So this strategy is the complete warrior's craft.
Yeah.
The way of the warrior does not include other ways, such as Confucianism, Buddhism, certain traditions, artistic accomplishments, and dancing. But even though these are not part of the way, if you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything. Man must polish their particular way.
Right. Now there, Musashi, again, as we said before, Musashi is not particularly articulate. Not only is he not particularly articulate, but the language of the time does not include sophisticated conceptions. Yes? Or they're not as readily available. They might be there technically, but they're not as readily available. Just as The word appropriate is in language, right? Throughout my childhood was there. But appropriateness, this, I never saw this anywhere. Yes. Even though most people understand what it means, it's not seen as a psychology or a philosophy. Same thing with discernment, right? And so when he says that you must see this in everything, in other words, you must practice not only discernment, but abstract thinking. Yes. Overview perspective,
Yes.
abstract thinking is the key to
Yes.
the language of conceptuality, which is the alternative name for way of impeccability. I'm laying this out to say that, when we look at history and we understand that, yes, there's a lot of profoundness here, but when you think things through to the end and you perspective shift to multiple perspectives, you start to see their gaps, their holes, their flaws, right? Like, this is what frustrated me, not only with Musashi, but many other readings. I said, fine, Musashi, how do I use this? How do I apply this? Right? He says you must do this, but he doesn't tell you how exactly. I wanted the exact tool. Yes, the exact tool here is practice discernment, practice abstract thinking. Yes, that's to practice abstract thinking is you look for the commonality of value. It's not that hard to figure out. It's a very real, practical, usable tool. Yeah. And it says, this commonality, this is what way of impeccability is. This is way of the warrior. It's the same thing. This, all right, it's more sophisticated, way much more sophisticated than this particular way of the warrior. But still, it's underlying, it has a lot of similarity to it, right? All right, please continue, Beena.
Yes. Okay. The benefit of weapons in strategy. There is a time and a place for use of weapons. The best use of the companion sword is in a confined space, or
All
when
right,
you
so
are
so again,
engaged. Yes.
a little bit sorry. There is a time and a place for use of weapons. We have to understand also that Musashi does use some strategy. I personally feel, this is my personal viewpoint, that this sentence is a layered double meaning sentence. Musashi is clearly exhibiting discernment and thinking and moreness. Yes, not to the extent of way of impeccability, but or in our modern times, right? But still, he's also unaware of the cultural context. So when he says there's a time and a place for use of weapons, yeah, he's kind of going a bit against that culture, which says every problem you have is essentially solved with violence, which means weapons. Yeah? So he's saying this is not the only way. And he said it before, but he can't say it so super directly because now he's criticizing the establishment. And that's, of course, dangerous, right? So he has to say it in more subtle ways. So for the superiority paradigmers, they can read this to say, well, he's just telling you when you must use the long sword, when you must use the short sword. They will only regard it in a martial context. But I feel that, and based on what he said earlier, that it also means that weapons and violence isn't the only way. They sometimes are needed, but not always. Whereas the culture says always, or the culture of the time, especially. All right, please continue, Angel.
Yes. The best use of the companion sword is in a confined space, or when you are engaged closely with an opponent. The longsword can be used effectively in all situations. The halberd is inferior to the spear on the battlefield. With the spear, you can take the initiative. The halberd is defensive. In the hands of one of two men of equal ability, the spear gives a little extra strength. Spear and halberd both have their uses, but
All right, so
neither
here
is
also
very.
we need to have the translation is very useful. The spear, he
Mhm.
means Yari, spelled with a Y, right? And it's very interesting. Yari sounds very much like Gary. And in English, if you look up the meaning of the word Gary, it means spear. Yeah? Independently come. Yeah, it's just fascinating, right? So
Oh, yes.
Yari, Gary, spear, spear. So it is just long thing with a point on the end. But the halberd is the same long pole, but it's got a big blade that curves to it, right? And it's used to cut and slice. Because when you have a curve, as I explained about how
Yes.
slicing and cutting works, right? If you chop, it's ineffective. If you draw the blade across the cut, it's more effective. And curved blades allow you to do that. So and that's why women were trained to use the uh, uh, naginata, which is the one with the curved blade, which he calls here a halberd. But halberds, when you look them up, medieval halberds, you're going to say, well, what are they using? You see, it's a poor translation. You have to say specifically, because there's no equivalent in medieval European halberds to the naginata, right? They all got these wild looks. I mean, there's some kind of, but not really. No. Anyway, so
Yes.
it's very interesting that he says this. He doesn't explain why.
Okay, so it is getting a bit pause here. Anyway, but neither is very beneficial in confined spaces. They cannot be used for taking a prisoner. They are essentially weapons for the field. Anyway, if you learn indoor techniques, you will think narrowly and forget the true way. Thus, you will have difficulty in actual encounters. The bow is tactically strong at the commencement of battle, especially battles on a move, as it is possible to shoot quickly from among the spearmen. However, it is unsatisfactory in siege or when the enemy is more. Okay, so we don't have a screen here, but this is very interesting because what Musashi was just saying, of course, he's using specifically the analogy of uh, sword fencing. But what he's saying that, okay, if you keep practicing in a room or in a confined place, you will not be able to fight in open battlefield. The lesson, of course, the message here is to practically practice things in real time, in real situations. Like it, for me, again, it means that yes, theory is important, but practical has, of course, no match with the theory, because when you acquire the experience, the real experience, like doing the exercise in a narrow or a confined place, which means that you are safe. You know that you are safe. There are no opponents. They are not coming from everywhere without having any idea that, okay, from where someone will attack you or just chase you. You don't have any idea. In battlefield, when you practice that, it's a completely different ballgame. And this is what Musashi is saying here, that practicing there will give you a bit of a strength. But to learn, really learn the fight, you need to go and put yourself in a situation of a battlefield. This is what Musashi is saying for me. Of course, many other things, but this is something I really I'm really appreciating Musashi now. I was not really not convinced with Musashi's ideas, but now I'm really appreciating him to share these type of techniques, these type of wisdom, these type of skills and and keys to learn those skills at that time, in that era, where everything was so specifically available only to the elites of the society. Superiority paradigm was like really big thing as far as I understand now. And Musashi being a really a revolutionary and like really open-minded, a really modern thinker who believe in humanity, who believes in like, okay, yes, sharing things. And he wrote that book. I don't know the other, of course, the other intents he had, but sharing, writing books about things and the art and the skill of okay, this military arts, and giving you the right, precise tip to understand the abstract. He was helping really tremendously to those people. Really, this is
Who
something
was
really
he,
amazing
Beena?
that I
Who's
should
he?
add. Now, Musashi, we were just
Ah,
discussing. I was
yeah,
just
yeah.
hearing about Musashi, that how he was helping those people in that era, in that time, where things were only and mostly available only to the elites of the society, but somehow privileged.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's huge. It's huge, right? This change in thinking. It's just why Musashi is the classic. He opened the
Yes.
door. to this
Yes.
alternative Moreness culture. And of course, Musashi's value today, or at least, since about the 70s, is
Hmm.
in a business context, right? Where they're using
Yes.
his strategies, like you say, in the abstract, this conceptuality that he introduced. Yes. And of course, in Way of Impeccability, this has been taken a lot further, as far as close to the end as possible. It fills in the holes in Musashi. And there are
Yes.
holes in Musashi. It's very important to be aware of this, to understand
Oh,
this.
yes.
And it's really cool when we see this, right? Again, see, Musashi's intent here is talking about weapons training, but there is also about the ability to be in order to be a swordsman. But his intent is to be a swordsman. Yeah. Anyhow, so not to be somebody who has independence of being. That's not his aim. Yeah. All right. Will you continue reading? Let me scroll a bit here. You can read. Oh,
Okay. Our Instagram video has ended after an hour.
yes,
And
yes. It ends after an hour.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
The best use of
Ah,
companion sword is in a confined space or when you are engaged closely with an opponent. The long sword can be used effectively in all situations. The halberd is inferior to spear on the battlefield. With the spear, you can take the initiative. The halberd is defensive. In the hands of two men of equal ability, the spear gives a little extra strength. Spear and halberd both have their uses, but neither is very beneficial in confined spaces. They cannot be used for taking a prisoner. They are essentially weapons for the field. Anyway, if you learn indoor techniques, you will think narrowly and forget the true way. Thus, you will have difficulty in actual encounters. The bow is tactically strong at the commencement of battle, especially battles on a move, as it is possible to shoot quickly from among the spearmen. However, it is unsatisfactory in siege or when the enemy is more than 40 yards away. For this reason, there are nowadays few traditional schools of archery. There is little use nowadays for this kind of a skill. From inside fortification, the gun has no equal among weapons. It is the
scroll in a moment. Ah,
Leo. Okay, so okay, we can end this today's live here and see you guys tomorrow. We will continue with Musashi. And by the way, just for anyone who is watching us, listening to this, you might feel that we are just stopping after every single line and continue discussion. Actually, it is not discussion. Syl is sharing the context, and this is what actually we need for this. This is the basic of the capital R reading. We are practicing capital R reading of Musashi here. We are going to end this today here, but we will continue. And of
yes,
course,
yes.
there is no problem in stopping it even after every single word, no
No,
problem at all.
no,
If you are getting
no,
value, this is the real implementation of many of
no,
perspectives and ideas and conception
no,
of way of impeccability, like building your patience, let go of your ego.
no.
Like, I want to read that. Okay, I want to know
Yeah.
more. No, just
Well,
pay
just read to
attention
the end here,
tomorrow.
Beena. Just read to the end,
Yes.
so we can start on timing and strategy tomorrow. Yeah, because this doesn't not really anything valuable yet. So just read real quick.
So this,
Yeah.
okay. So please share screen.
Oh, 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 oh. Sorry. Yeah, my internet is dropping. I don't know. They did something this morning, and now it's just terrible. So I have to call them back again. All right. So, right, he's saying, however, it's unsatisfactory in sieges or when the enemy is more than 40 yards away. For this reason, there are nowadays few traditional skills of archery. There's little use nowadays for this kind of skill because of guns, right? And they just got introduced. Now, I'll explain a bit more about guns next time. From inside fortifications, the gun has no equal among weapons. It is a supreme weapon on the field before the ranks clash. But once swords are crossed, the gun becomes useless. And it's amazing that even though guns were superior, how long they clung to the sword out of sheer tradition. The Tom Cruise movie, The Last Samurai, it's all about this. It's one of the last very famous battles where the samurai refused to give into the gun because they didn't want to lose the status associated with the blade. The awful truth, they didn't want to face it. And of course, they all died, right? As a result, they got slaughtered by the guns. Pure ego, pride, foolishness, tradition, sticking, inability to change, stuck in a bubble, ego, etc. This is terrible. Right? So, but Musashi acknowledges this reality, but he still clings a bit to the virtue of the gun. Once the swords clash, why on earth would you even need to clash, right? But anyway, one of the virtues of the bow is that you can see the arrows in flight and correct your aim accordingly, whereas gunshots cannot be seen. Now, I understand that gunshots, these are flintlocks, at least the matchlocks in Musashi's time. They evolved a little bit to flintlocks, but then it got stuck there for a couple of 100 years, pretty much, right? So they're very slow to reload. It's not like a modern gun where you can just shoot, shoot, shoot. No, it takes you like a minute between shots, if not more, right? And then it's a matchlock, which means you have a piece of rope that's burning, and then you pull the trigger and it touches this to the pan, sets off the powder, sets off the explosion. Very clumsy. Of course, rain's no good. You can get jostled and the powder spills off your pan, and then your gun won't fire. So not wildly effective. But even in such a primitive gun, still had advantages. Yeah, and uh, one of the Tokugawas, I think it was Nobunaga, if I remember correctly. He embraced guns, very anti-cultural, very anti this. It was revolutionary for him to do so. He was seen as a heretic almost, right? But he used it very effectively, and he wiped out all of his enemies who refused to do so. Right. One of the virtues, oh, I read that, right? You must appreciate the importance of this. In other words, again, whenever he says they must appreciate the importance of this, we can substitute one word for that. But we'll get to it later. It really becomes like, come on now. Just as a horse must have endurance and no defect, so it is with weapons. Horses should walk strongly, and swords and companion swords should cut strongly. Spears and halberds must stand up to heavy use. Bows and guns must be sturdy. Weapons should be hardy rather than decorative. Again, yeah, he's directly talking to the popinjays, to use the English word, right? Which
Hmm.
is, and those who are all about ego and looking special and had these fancy weapons. I mean, you go back in history and you look at the artistry involved in weapon making. There are some incredibly beautiful weapons out there, right? Especially when the guns came out, they allowed for this a bit more. So you had these very fancy guns, yeah, but this fancy doesn't help you. You're just looking important. But this is, of course, the superiority paradigm, narcissist culture, all about how you look. Effectiveness is not as important as how you look. Right? The weapon should be hardy rather than decorative. A little dig at those popinjays, those BMNs, in other words, narcissists. You should not have a favorite weapon. See, when we abstract this, very important. Yes. Yeah, because again,
Yeah.
like I say, I try not to have favorites. Why? Because it devalues everything else by contrast, by implication. Yeah, same thing
Hmm.
with the swords, right? With weapons. Yeah, should not have a favorite. To become over familiar with one weapon is as much a fault as not knowing it sufficiently well. You got to know them all, right? So don't get stuck in one bubble only, right? You should not copy others, but use weapons which you can handle properly. Again, right? Whenever he says these sentences, I can replace one word with that sentence. Yes. right? Just one word, chapter 1 of the
Mhm.
Biella series, right? It comes up time and again, just in this little section here that we're reading now. It's come up twice again, right? You should not copy others, but use weapons which you can handle properly. It is bad for commanders and troopers to have likes and dislikes. These are things you must learn thoroughly. Yeah. Yeah. Don't have those preferences. Learn to be flexible, fluid, adaptable. Yes. Which is part of the philosophy of, we'll leave it unsaid because it's going to come more and more. I don't want to kind of ruin it before we get there. It's going to be at some point, you're going to be so overwhelmed with this missing concept that you can, oh, come on, Musashi, come on, just say it now already. All right. So we'll end it there for today. We'll end it there for today. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That was so
Yes.
cool that
Thank you so much, Syl. Thank you
that
so much for sharing. Even
yeah,
with having all the internet problems and everything, this is what we were just practicing. That being patient with whatever is happening. We still tried and do our best. So thank you so much. And also that we will continue with Musashi, of course, tomorrow, and
yeah,
as long as it is going to be, and it will be long because it is not just a simple reading of that book of five rings. It is to
no,
be aware of the culture and having a context of why and what Musashi was saying and why it was
yes.
appropriate at that time, not necessarily now,
Well, that's
but at
one
that
of the
time.
reasons for doing it, not the
Yes,
only one.
yes,
One.
yes. So this is what we are going to have. So I hope that you guys were enjoying that. We had
Yeah,
3 4 people
yeah,
there on Instagram, which is
yeah.
really good. And
I mean,
we hope to see
our
you
bigger
more.
intent, Beena, sorry, before you finish and close here, our bigger
Mm.
intent is about extracting value, capital V value, and capital U usefulness. That's what we're
Yes.
going to do. Yes, we are going to see Musashi in context, in the culture and the development of culture. Right? Specifically, how Musashi furthers the culture. He's also furthering, which is quite ironic. Musashi is so profoundly boosting the samurai culture, but at the same time, he's sowing the seeds for its collapse. Yes, because it's not sustainable as he imagines it to be. So he's extolling the virtues of that culture, but in doing so and thinking about it, thinking it thoroughly, practice this, all of this. If you do that and you take it to the end, you see that they're flaws, right? And that's what happened. Eventually, all things they all figure themselves out. But we're looking to take what he's sharing, take it further, and extract value from it, and also see how this is a nascent Moreness culture, which it didn't survive because it had too many flaws, but it can survive. We can adapt it, modify it, and this is what's happened in Nobelia culture, Moreness culture, Way-of-Impeccability. Yes, I mean, it's just Musashi is only one element of that. It's many. When Way-of-Impeccability was put together, Musashi, I didn't even remember anything about Musashi except this one point that irritated me at the time, right? And, and so I didn't remember any of the details. It doesn't matter though. When you internalize them, you don't need to remember them. Yes, and there's from many, 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 many sources. I'll talk about the Great Reading Project tomorrow. Yeah. It's important in this context. It's important to understand. All right,
Yes,
brilliant.
yes,
So
yes.
please continue,
Thank you
Beena.
so
Please
much.
continue.
Yes, please. I was just closing it up, and then I was saying that okay. Thank you so much for being here. Hope to see you guys again and for more time. And yes, I would love to have we both love to have questions and comments from you guys
Oh,
because whatever you feel that you want to input something, you want to ask something, you want to share something, just sharing your takeaway, your feedback, it's all
yeah.
valuable. It's all valuable. So please do click like and subscribe to the channel also here on YouTube and also in the group and also on Instagram. Soon we will be on TikTok also. By doing that, you are not going to only just, of course, you are going to boosting our content, but you are going to, on a bigger picture, which is our intent, that you are going to train the algorithm to give more of content of the same thing, same value.
Oh,
You will train that. And this is something very
yeah.
crucial nowadays to pay attention to your algorithm because by clicking every single time when you are clicking like on something, you are providing data to your algorithm that this is the type of content I want to see more. Please, if you find any value in it, please do that. It is not going to be wasted in any way. Longer term, short term, yes. So please do pay attention to your algorithm, not only online but also in your life. This is how we emphasize good things in your life, emphasize positive things in your life. This is how you are going to set the algorithm naturally for yourself. Thank you so much, Syl. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Pleasure, Beena.
Yes.
Yes, see you guys tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow.
Yes. Yes.
Most
Bye for
brilliant.
now.
Most excellent. Most excellent. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. And me